In a world overrun with an infinite amount of multiverses originating from a plethora of sources, a group of longtime friends band together and try to make sense of it all and present it to an audience in an easy-to-digest podcast. This is Geeking Off the Page.
Greetings, geeks. Welcome to another episode of Geeking Off the Page. It looks like this is another Trevor and Mike edition. No unholy Voltron, I don't think. We'll see where it goes from here.
We'll see. For those keeping track, this is episode 67. Maybe we're past the unholy Voltrons. Maybe they'll all be unholy Voltrons from this point out.
Might just be a foot and a fist.
I'm the right leg again. Anyways, so for those of you who kind of kept track, I left after our last podcast last week, and my wife took me to England, to London to be specific, and I got back last night. So I'm a little jet lagged, but I have some stories to tell, sights to see. I tried to catch up on various shows and stuff like that, and I failed miserably because the place we're staying did not have a television, no telly, because in England you have to pay a tax to have a TV. It's like a license. You need a TV license to have a license in your home.
Huh.
And they would make money hand over fist in the US. But yeah, and so the place we're staying just didn't have a television, and honestly, didn't miss it. Didn't miss it at all. We filled our days so much that, didn't miss not having TV. So unfortunately,
quick question before you go on.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see the James Gunn announcement?
I did.
Okay, so we'll talk about that later. Okay,
Absolutely.
Continue.
So, God, yeah, there was just so much that happened. I'm just gonna say I haven't seen the third episode of Last of Us yet. My wife.
Oh, I hear that's a doozy.
I'm
not watching it, but I'm glad I'm not, based on the reviews.
I'm trying to stay away from the reviews until I get a chance to see this episode. So I've been like avoiding media a lot. So I hope to see it pretty soon. But I did catch the James. Oh, also Bad Batch. My sister told me that episode 5 was kind of like a want episode. She hasn't seen 6 yet. And on the plane,
for the audio listeners, there's a gesture that went along with that.
Yeah, you'll have to see it in YouTube. And on the plane, I watched a couple of movies because you don't have much else to do when you're on the plane for that long. And I caught Black Panther 2. And
was it amazing?
For a movie that cost $200 million, I expected better effects. Like, I really did. Like, you could tell when they switched to an all CG sort of sequence, and you're just like, I thought they'd do better than this, and they didn't.
You sound like Sam Wilson, Captain America. You should do better.
Yeah, it honestly should have been better. For that much money spent, the effects should have been bulletproof, like beyond bulletproof, and they weren't. They were probably worse than the effects in that final fight sequence in the first Black Panther that will look like PlayStation 4 graphics. It was just like, wow. There was like whole companies that just dropped the ball there and were like, don't care. So yeah. It was pretty bad. So we're going to,
for the rest of your travels, you saw a show, you saw a comic book store.
Not two. No, I'm going to first talk about the whole DCU God and Monsters announcement that James Gunn made.
We're going to start with that. All right, let's lead with that.
Let's just get right into it, because it's a pretty big deal. So for those of you who've hidden under a rock, that didn't realize that James Gunn has finally, what's the best way of putting it? He decided to talk about what's going on, kind of dispel some of the rumors.
Yeah, it's kind of like a big press release for essentially the DCU phase 1.
Yeah.
And what the Brain Trust has come up with.
Yeah.
And it's a doozy.
It is.
Now, the whole thing, okay, as soon as James Gunn was put in charge of the creative side of the DCU, I liked what he can do with weird characters. I like how he gets, just strange things that people don't know, kind of twist them around, does his own take, and makes some really good stuff. But how does that work with a cinematic universe with characters that go back as far as Superman, like the
Mm-hmm.
original OG superhero? And I wasn't sure how he was going to handle that. And given this slate of stuff, I have some opinions about this.
All right. So I'm gonna for people who don't know what happened. So yeah, so he came out and basically has dispelled a lot of the rumors that have been flying around through Twitter about, oh, they're going to do this or they're doing that. And he kind of laid a lot of those fears to rest. So he said, like, Shazam, which is coming out in March, Flash, which is coming out in June. Flash is the big reset for the DC universe.
Which you kind of figured it should be if you're
Now,
going
we
to do
still
something.
have
It's like Flashpoint,
Yeah,
essentially.
so we have Blue Beetle in August and Aquaman in December.
I
And
don't
then
know
he's
how
like,
that's going to land.
I'm not sure how either, but he did say, so what the plan is, because they're controlling all aspects, TV, film, animated, even the games. So some of the stuff that is going to be up on HBO is episodic. Some of it's going to theaters, some live action, some animated. So he said stuff like Joker, the Joker film, and then its sequel, the most recent Batman film, and its upcoming sequel are part of the DC Elseworlds universe. So
And
they're
I
not.
don't think that's a bad idea.
I think that's a great idea because he's also has the Superman and Lois that is coming out, the Teen Titans Go, the animated series. That's all Elseworlds. So that shit can still go along, say their own stories, and it doesn't affect the main DC universe, but it still is content being put out. It's a great idea. It's almost like the what if. But then he said, all right, now we're going to get into what else is coming. So we have first up the slate, he talked about Creature Commandos.
And that's a weird one to lead with.
I think it's weird, but I think it's also he's kind of showing that they're not sidestepping because DC, I mean, has such a huge range from when it started to current day. That stuff that hasn't been talked about or even touched. So I think Creature Commandos is a nice way of saying, all right, this is some of the weirder shit that's in the back of the DC closet that needs to come out. So like when he brought out Weasel in the Suicide Squad, a lot of people were like, who? Well, Creature Commandos, let's bring these out. And
And
Creature Command
another thing about this, too, is I'm pretty sure this was in progress before everything else happened.
I think
Like,
so
I mean,
too.
that's kind of my hunch. It's kind of,
I have a
because,
feeling this
like,
is something that he'd wanted to work on.
yeah,
Uh,
it's a spin-off of Suicide Squad,
yeah.
Peacemaker, going to this.
And this is
So
going to
it
be
is a holdover, I'm
and it's going
guessing.
to be a completely animated series on
Right.
HBO, which is great. The first big live action film they have is Waller, Amanda
Wait,
Waller.
one thing back, as far as the Creature Commandos too, is he
Mhm.
was talking about how he's trying to get the actors, I guess, as much as possible to stay consistent throughout all media.
Well, I think that's
So
it
if it's an
for
animated,
if it's a show, a movie, or animated. The person doing the voice acting, the animated, will be the live action actor for the film, or the live action actor in the episodic series, which to me is hell. It's a huge commitment for the actors,
yeah.
but it's a bigger commitment for DC to try to keep things consistent, which is great. Because the thing is also, I mean, if someone says, "Oh, you're going to be such and such character, and you're going to be doing some voiceover work in this animation, you're going to be appearing live action here in this movie, and you're going to be showing up in the series," you're like, "I got 10 years ahead of me of paychecks. Why wouldn't I sign up?"
And at the same time, it is a huge commitment for the actors.
It is.
Like maybe you
It's a.
want to branch out into other things and try some other stuff. It's like, no,
Mhm.
you got to do this voiceover.
But
You
if
have to
it's
do all
a
this other
if
stuff.
it's a guaranteed paycheck, for some actors, it'll be like, yes, absolutely, I'll take that. It's better to have 10 years of guaranteed work than, you might have one or two big paydays over 10 years, but then a lot of downtime where you're spending that money. So as I was saying, so the first live action film on the slate is Waller.
I think that's the TV series.
Is it TV?
Yeah,
I'm
I'm pretty
seeing
sure.
live. Oh yeah, okay, it's a live action series. which to me is the perfect glue, hold everything together. It is the absolute best web because Waller has her fingers in so many pies. She can interact with all these different characters in a reasonable way. And they got a really good actors playing her. So, unless like there's a tragic car accident or plane wreck or something, we're good.
Now, the thing with Waller, though, is that's a stupid name.
Come on,
They
it's
should have
Amanda.
called it Checkmate. They should have called it anything else. They should have
No,
called
Amanda,
it.
make it as simple as possible. I'm not going to say DC fans are dumb, but when I look at all this, the little Snyder wannabe geeks, there's got to be an element of low IQ out there somewhere.
No, Waller's a stupid name. I'm
I
sticking with that.
I liked it.
Really? Okay, audio listeners, YouTube watchers, let us know what you think.
All right.
I think it's a stupid name. Prove me wrong.
So now we're getting into the nitty gritty. So here's the next 8 coming down the line. We have Superman Legacy in theaters. Just want to see where he goes with this, really.
Now, why is it Superman Legacy if it's the first film and it's an almost origin? That is a massive red flag for me.
I don't know if it's going to be Superman's origin. I mean, everyone knows Superman. Why keeps
and they say it's not going to be a reset. What I'm scared of, and they did the All-Star Superman, which is one of the greatest comic book series of Superman. But the end of that, spoiler, he dies at the end of it.
Okay, well,
and if it's Superman Legacy based on All-Star Superman, are they going to kill Superman in the first movie?
I don't know.
And bring in the Superman's son? And this gets into the Brave and the Bold. There's a weird connection here going on, and it kind of has me freaked out. Because all I want is a good Superman movie. Just one Superman movie that can go toe to toe with the Christopher Reeve Superman.
Well, that was your good Superman movie.
78. What?
That was your good Superman movie. They really can't do another one like that.
You should be able to. Why
should
not?
be, but look how many times they've tried, and it just keeps failing again and again.
There's so much stuff. And another red flag is I heard something. Yeah, okay, of course, internet. Who knows if it's true, but that James Gunn said something about he wasn't interested in the reporter side of Superman, the reporter side of Clark Kent.
I think again, this is just
Clark Kent. Let me get those vocals
I think
right.
we just have to wait and see what's. I mean, the fact that they've taken the steps that all right, this is what's coming up, is a good sign to me. A sign that they're not like, hey, everything's under wraps, and you'll see it when it happens. They're like, all right, this is the shit we're gonna, because like you gotta remember, the Marvel didn't start announcing their movies in advance until they were well deep into phase 2.
Right.
Because they didn't even realize they could string movies together like this. So Gunn realizes this is a thing, and by doing this is kind of building up some of the anticipation. And the fact that they're showing both series and movies and animated stuff. So from there,
I'm so scared. Hold on, I have one more thing to say. There was an internet meme that was out as a suggestion for a Superman story, which I thought was amazing. So Clark Kent is investigating something. The CIA realizes this reporter is getting too close to the truth, and we have to assassinate him. It would essentially be a comedy because all these CIA assassins are trying to kill this reporter, and for some reason they just can't kill him.
I think that would be a great little one-off on HBO.
It would be so good. So it's like some sort of crazy thing like that. I would love to see that. But that reporter element of Superman is so integral to the character. I'm scared that that's going to be wiped.
I don't think it's going to be wiped clean. I'm
scared.
I'm not going to second guess what they're going to do until it comes out, until we get more. Because right now we just have titles. So like Lanterns. Which is
hold on. Let's hold on. I have to finish Superman. Another thing, a trope that James Gunn always does is the bad dad. It's like, my dad is so bad, and I'm scared it's going to be thrown into Superman some way, where it's either proper Superman, his dad did something bad and blew up the planet or something, or scares me even more, if it's going to be Clark Kent is the bad dad and he dies, and then the new modern DC Superman, the Superboy, is the one that takes over.
Well,
I'm terrified about that.
they just did that whole thing with the whole TV series of Superman, the Tales of what I didn't even watch it, where they had like the two sons and all that other bullshit. And I know Gunn had said something to the effect that he didn't like the whole marginalizing Superman to make his two sons the one who's really super and the one who's not sort of bullshit. He was like, no, that's not Superman. Don't even put Superman's name on the title then if that's what you're going to do. Call it Superboy, you know.
But the
So,
legacy is what gets me.
well, this is what
Like,
we're
why
going.
is it called that? I mean, it's working title. They could change it,
Yeah. So
but
I'm
I'm
gonna
scared.
move. I'm gonna step forward from Superman. Now they have Lanterns, which is it's all gonna be basically almost like they said like a procedural based cop show with the precinct as Earth, and it's gonna be Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart.
And that's fourth in the TV series.
Yeah,
So that's later along the line.
I'm just going from the order I have here. I don't have them in the order because again, you gotta remember, I'm a little jet lagged. Um, we have the Authority.
That's
Which
the second movie.
yeah,
So
which
that comes after Superman. And that is another red flag for me. If you're going to dive into the DC universe
mhm.
and start from scratch, why the hell would you use a Wildstorm property as the second movie? It's crazy. It's essentially an Avengers ripoff back from the late 90s where everybody was doing that. Everybody was doing
Mhm.
the Watchmen thing on existing properties. And that's a bonkers one to lead with. Now, like phase 3, I could see,
I'm not things
but
I'm
it's crazy.
when I'm looking at the titles, there's not a definitive like Infinity War Endgame storyline they're running with here. At least now he has mentioned that there is like a plot that's going to be carrying through some of these. Some of them there's not. So we have.
Now, one thing with the Authority,
Mhm.
I didn't even think about this until some people online had mentioned it. It would be kind of neat if they were being set up to be the anti-Justice League and sort of like an anti-hero in the
Mhm.
whole thing.
Oh,
Because the Authority, they go around killing people left and right. Like they don't
yeah.
care. It's kind of like the
Well,
boys.
this is why I think it sets up nicely. So you have the live action series of Paradise Lost. We're going to find out more about Themyscira.
That's the
This
last TV series.
that's the lot. This is kind of where we're um building up Wonder Woman. Either this is post Wonder Woman or pre Wonder Woman.
And that's a weird one as well.
But
Like
as a
so much
series,
of
it
this stuff
works.
is freaking me out.
As
But
as a series that's going to work because it's going to help set up some of the other things. Because you've got like
they're
Batman Brave
saying
and the
it's
Bold.
Game of Thrones with all women. I mean, there could be some good sequences in there.
Yes, yes, but that's
But
let's get through this list first before we start hitting the different ones. So we got
is that what we're doing?
yeah,
Okay.
we got Batman Brave and the Bold.
Okay, that's another stupid one. Why is Robin in there already? And why is it Damian Wayne? Okay, we're gonna hit this later. Let's
All right,
keep
we'll hit
going.
this later. Booster Gold.
That's kind of cool.
Um,
Like for a weird one to throw into the mix.
mhm.
It's like, okay. Okay.
Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow.
That one freaks me out because of the story it's based on. Let's keep going.
And then finally, Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
So
That's a fun one.
that was a fun one. Booster Gold is going to be kind of interesting, especially because we have Blue Beetle like later this year. Is it this year? Yeah, later this year we have Blue Beetle. Now it's not the same, not the Ted Cord Blue Beetle that Booster Gold hung around with. That was like probably one of the best comedy duos DC has ever made of, Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. So I doubt we'll get something like that. Which I mean, if they do end up trying to do that, it might be cool, might not. We'll see how it goes. But when I read through the list and watched his announcement, I was a little freaked out over some of them, but at the same time, I'm going to take it on faith until some of this stuff we start seeing some of them because we haven't.
How can you take anything on faith at this point?
Because after the bullshit garbage that was the Snyder universe that DC was just vomiting out left and right and going, this is great. You guys should love this. Uh, Honestly, a 3-year-old with some construction paper and a crayon could produce better. Like, I'm sorry for people if I'm stepping on your toes or hurting your feelings. Zack Snyder is a crap fucking creator. He can't do anything creative on his own. He's got to glom onto other people's creative ideas and then shit on them with his like wannabe 12-year-old, ooh, this will be cool idea, and ruin the fuck out of everything. So anyone who pisses and moans that Man of Steel or Batman v Superman or Justice League were great films, just bury your fucking head in the sand and suffocate already, because I'm tired of listening to these whiny ass crappy opinions.
Oh, Trevor,
Not,
you just got so many haters.
I don't
You
care.
probably have more haters than me right now.
I honestly I don't care. He's not a good director. I mean, any film that you go, hey, this was a good film. Did he write it? No. And like Watchmen, he basically used the comic book as a bunch of storyboard panels. Same thing with 300.
And that was good until he
until he decided that he knew better.
Yeah.
And come up with his own thing. 300 used it as comic book panels. But when you start saying, hey, here's something that doesn't have any panels, it doesn't have an existing story for you to follow on, come something up, it's crap.
Okay,
It's
you know what? I have
fucking
something to tie
garbage.
into this because, okay, the same thing with Zack Snyder. The fact they got him to do Superman and try and do the whole DCU, wrong guy for the job. He does stuff like the Watchmen vibe really well. I thought the movie Watchmen was
But the Watchmen
pretty good until the end.
Have a completely different feel than Superman.
Exactly. So he cannot do that. That's not his wheelhouse.
It's not.
And
the thing
for
is,
him to try and do that whole Snyderverse thing, he dropped the ball big time. He did the casting great. Whoever casted everybody.
Yeah. But the thing is, when you watch like that 4-hour Justice League,
I didn't watch any of that stuff.
You may as well just stick an ice pick in your ear and pour bleach in your eyes.
I did that instead, actually. That is what I did.
Like,
I decided to do that instead.
Yeah. It's fucking horrible. And
but I'm scared that James Gunn might end up being the same kind of thing.
I want to flip that around to look at what James Gunn has made, especially for superheroes. Guardians of the Galaxy.
But it's a weird, quirky thing, and he did his own take.
But it worked.
It was good.
If you look at
but can he do Superman and Batman?
But if
that's
you look
the
at
thing.
These, the Authority, that's right in this goddamn wheelhouse.
That is, but as movie number 2 for the DCU, that sounds completely insane to me.
To me, it doesn't sound as insane. I think is they have to answer. I mean, unfortunately, with the DC fans, you have to answer the Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman equation.
And if you look at the equation right now, you have Superman Legacy as the first movie. Brave and the Bold, Batman with Damian Wayne. It's like, whoa, what the hell happened here? I thought we were having a young Superman, and Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne are supposed to be kind of equals, kind of same age.
Who said it's supposed to be a young Superman?
That's what was said. That's why Henry Cavill apparently isn't being cast, because they're looking for someone like 25 years old.
So the thing is Superman doesn't age at the same rate as everyone else does. So
still, it's weird. It's a strange choice. I would like to have essentially like the Christopher Reeve Superman and like the TV series Batman, essentially, but kind of upgraded.
How about
I want Dick Grayson in there? Yeah, like give us the classics. There's so much material and so much history, and I'm afraid they're going to jump skip all of that and give us this weird kind of modern take that's been in comic book stores lately. And like the comic book industry is dying. I mean, Forbidden Planet apparently is pretty big and it's jam-packed. But that said, I know stores left and right around here are dropping.
Yeah. I look at it more as the fact that they're not just canceling other DC projects underway, like the second Batman film, the second Joker film, the Teen Titans Go. The fact that they're not just out and out canceling them and saying, no, these are Elseworlds, that's a good sign. The fact they're just not
it's a little bit confusing, but not just, it's the right way to go forward with it.
They're not just out and out shelving Shazam, Flash, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman saying, yep, fuck it. 100, we'll just take the losses to get the tax write-off.
I guess it's good enough to not be a tax write-off.
Yeah. But it's when I see and the thing is this whole phase 1, as they're called, there's chapter 1 is Gods and Monsters, which is initially I was like, it's kind of an odd titling, but it
I
kind
kind of
of
liked it.
it makes sense. It really does. As you look at the different ones, as you look at each one, who's the god and who's the monster? Swamp Thing the god or a monster? Is the Supergirl woman of tomorrow, is she a god or is she a monster?
Waller.
Waller, I mean, in my mind, she thinks she's a god because of all the different superheroes and villains that she can basically, the puppet master of, but is she more a monster than she is a god? Is she a monster who controls the gods? This is the parts of the things that, questions that just giving us titles isn't enough. And I mean, yeah, we can go wild with speculation. I know Twitter has gone fucking ape shit with the speculation back and forth. YouTube's blown up with speculation. I don't want to jump on that bandwagon yet until we get a little bit more concrete information. Just because we can go wildly off on a tangent that, means absolutely nothing. We may, strike that little nugget of gold that's actual truth, but we don't know. We won't know until we get more. So
All that said, I want to go through this stuff and kind of dissect it a little bit.
All right, let's get serious.
Okay. So Trevor,
Yes,
if it was you launching the DCU, what kind of a thing would you launch with?
Depends on, like, name a character that you want me to start off with.
Anything. So you've got James Gunn's job. They're saying, okay, it's your job to do the first phase of the DCU, make a 10-year plan.
Okay.
This is the back catalog of characters. We own all of them.
All right.
So go.
Gordon. The very first film would be Gordon.
It'd be a film.
It'd be a film. I'd start with a film of Gordon. James Gordon. We would start with him almost like sitting in the cop bar that most cops have, the bar, and having a couple of drinks before he goes home and talking about how things have changed so much, so rapidly, so much since he took over as commissioner. And then through his stories, we get to see his perspective of Batman. And that's basically
sort of like a Gotham Knights kind of thing.
Kind of like a Gotham Knights, but it's all from Gordon's perspective. We see his take on the villains, we see his take on Batman, and we see the compromises he's willing to do to let Batman operate because of just how fucked up Gotham is. We end that movie with him talking about, and his wife wants him to transfer to Metropolis, where that goddamn god alien seems to be running it, like running the police departments there. That introduces Batman. That introduces a little bit of Gordon's take on Superman. Next film, as we go
down what? Okay, let's go back and forth.
Okay.
That'll be more fun if we do that.
All right.
Okay, so first one I would do is Superman. Henry Cavill, and just wrap up last Snyderverse mess. Get Henry Cavill back as Superman, a modern day Superman, and you could do an all-star Superman. Like, you could kill Superman if you want to do in this one. But he would have the bright costume. It would be a lot of hope and optimism, and just to prove to everybody, look, we know how to make a movie. This would be the Iron Man. This is like one movie, one and done.
The only problem is you can't use Cavill for that.
I would.
I mean, the problem,
if I was directing it, he would be there. He would be hired, done. Bright Christopher Reeve costume, and it would essentially be an all-star Superman movie. And from that point, that's where I would have the reset.
See, I can see where you're coming with that. The problem is you've already had the Henry Cavill Superman snap a neck.
Doesn't matter. That's all crap. We'll pretend that didn't happen. Just the way James Gunn did the soft
he wakes up in the shower and is like, well, got to put on my Clark Kent uniform, or like puts on the Superman outfit, and then
he would basically just look at the camera and he'd wipe all the grime off it, and the colors would get brighter. and he'd sigh, then fly into the sky, and then we'd have a good movie.
All right. Okay. The only reason why I don't start with Superman is I feel he's a character you have to build to.
I figure he's the origin of superheroes, so let's start with him. So why would you not start with him?
Because I'd want to build up to Superman.
Like just the anticipation and the mystique
Not only
around
that,
him.
but you want to start with a man if you're good and then going to get to a Superman. I mean, at the end of the day, Batman is just he's a human who is in really need of a lozenge and some therapy versus someone like Superman that is a god among men. If you start that high, then everything from that point on is downhill in comparison. So I want to build up to the spectacle that is Superman at his finest. You know, catching a building, shit like that. Like Batman can't catch a building, not in his wildest dreams. Not no matter how fucking prepared he gets.
Oh, with prep time he could catch
Not
it.
even with prep time, he's not catching that building. Not with his bare hands. So I want to build to a character that the audiences will accept doing that. That I've built, I've made that groundwork. I've laid that foundation. So we get to that point, they're not just like, what?
Okay, so that's interesting. So we're coming at this two different angles. All right, second up, what do you got?
I'd want to do Wonder Woman, but I don't think I'd want to. I think I'd want to go to
You wanna, but you don't wanna.
I wanna, but don't wanna. So instead of putting together, like, because the thing is, if you do Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Justice League is right around the goddamn corner. I don't want to get there that fast. So if I do a start with a Batman, I'm then going to do a hard pivot and tell a story from a villain's point of view. And it may be the introduction of Booster Gold. It may be the introduction of a team or something, but tell the story from the villain's point of view this time. So the first movie is a Batman movie as told by Gordon. The next movie is a villain, and they're kind of them dealing with the DC universe, how it isn't fair. Villains outnumber the heroes 10-1 and still get their ass whipped at such regularity. So I'm not sure who I'd want to introduce, if it would be a small team or a secondary character, or hell, even do like a Green Lantern. Just something, or even Green Arrow would be a great one for that one. Let's get Green
As a
Arrow.
movie or TV series?
Maybe as a series. That one I would, if I'm going to introduce Green Arrow, I'm going to do it as like a 10 episode series on HBO, where I can show violence, gratuitous violence, absolutely gratuitous violence. And maybe even like a couple episodes into the show where you're telling it from the villain's point of view, Arrow offs him, and then he takes over the narrative of the story and carries out the other 7. So up until that point, we have the villain's speculation of where Green Arrow came from and his powers, and then he gets killed, and then Green Arrow takes over the narrative. We find out, it's completely bullshit. I was stuck on an island, perfected my archery, that sort of thing. And they're like, what? He's not like some god of archery or some shit. So yeah, something like that. So if I'm going to build up the Justice League, I'll use minor characters first to kind of get me there, and every once in a while I'll throw out one of the major 3 to kind of fill in. So that would be my plan for 10 years. The idea of being at the end of the 10 years would be the Justice League movie.
Okay, let me get to my number 2 before you do Justice League.
All right.
My number 2 is Batman, the TV series. Because Batman is one you can do on a budget because he's just a guy.
Mm-hmm. With a throat lozenge in therapy.
And you can dig deep into the whole world's greatest detective thing. That's never really been done before.
If I was to do Batman like that as a series, Batman Year One.
Yep.
Is exactly what I would do. Him coming fresh off his training and deciding, all right, he's coming back to Gotham. Now he's going to embark on his career. At this point, he still doesn't know he's going to be Batman yet. He just knows he's got all this training, this ninjutsu and all this other shit. And see him try and fail and recover and try again. And, eventually leading up the series end of putting on the mantle, putting on the cowl.
Yeah, because if you look at Daredevil from Netflix, that's one that worked really well because it's a
Yeah.
street level hero and it's intense. It's awesome. The
And he
whole
didn't
series was
he
great.
didn't put on the suit until he had that guy make him one. Up until that point, it was just that
Again,
cheesy,
Frank Miller.
yeah, kerchief over his face bullshit. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
So that's what I would do. I would start off with a hard reboot with Henry Cavill Superman, just to say, look, we know what we're doing. This is the Superman you want. We did it. We pulled it off. And now our second best character, Batman. But
now
again, let that one breathe.
if you do Batman as a series, HBO doesn't release everything all at once. They do week by week episodic releasing. So you could do a slow burn that way so that by the time you release the 10th episode, you then release the first movie. So they kind of coincide almost in the same week. So people are like, oh, I just watched the last episode of Batman Year One. Hey, now there's a such and such movie. Let's go see this.
Right. And that's the thing is with Batman, and I think the same thing with Spider-Man too. Like Spider-Man would require more VFX, but I think Spider-Man would work better as a TV series than a movie.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, Spider-Man is your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man dealing with the street level day-to-day shit. He doesn't need to be saving the planet.
Right. It's not an Avengers level threat.
No, not Avengers level. It's more
freaky level villains that are awesome that happen to be robbing bank machines and doing like minor crimes.
Vulture was stealing to finance, shit. What was a daughter or granddaughter or something? The original Vulture, not the movie Vulture. Most of Spider-Man's foes were robbing banks or knocking over gem retailers for the cash because they were supporting a family, or they weren't just like, hey, I'm going to make myself fabulously wealthy. That was never their goals for most of their crimes. It's just a case of Spider-Man would get in the way and there'd be a big tussle and shit would go down. It's not like, hey, it's Thanos here to take over half the world or kill half the world's population. That was never in Spider-Man's wheelhouse of threats to deal with.
Yeah.
But now that he's gone to that point, how do you scale him back? You really can't. Every threat has to get bigger to make the boom bigger. So yeah, that's why I would put Superman a little further down so the big boom could be there. Because Superman taking out muggers is kind of boring.
Yeah, but it's fun.
But it
is boring.
That's that terrible side scroller Superman game that came out way back when. I think it was SNES or one of those, where you're like taking on street thugs who just happen to be armed with kryptonite so they can harm you. And it's just like, how much of that goddamn planet rained down on us that your common street level thug has like a ring with some kryptonite in it so he can at least hurt Superman? Like, shit, that stuff's more common than lead. Just pave everything with kryptonite. Superman's done. That's what it seems like how much came down. So yeah. Like, oh, Luthor, hey, he found a meteorite and he had to send out a ship to get it. No, he just walked along the beach and picked up 5 rocks and 4 of them were kryptonite.
Yeah, and then gave it to all the street thugs.
Yeah, it's like, here you go. Superman comes around, give him a shot of this to the side of the jaw.
Okay, third project.
Oh God, third. Well, if one was Batman and 2 was some sort of, like, say, Green Arrow, 3 would have to be some sort of team up buddy, like Blue Beetle, Booster Gold sort of thing, which would honestly be a great comedy duo. It's almost like a Lethal Weapon of Booster Gold and Blue Beetle.
Yeah,
and
I actually really like that.
The Ted Kord Blue Beetle. And I would set up them for 3 movies. So they would be movie number 3, movie number 6, and movie number 9. So that they keep coming back just like Lethal Weapon movies. And they keep coming back. And it's their first adventures is them kind of meeting together and taking out whatever threat it is. The second one is them also meeting some of the other heroes coming into their world, like into their purview. And then the third one is them kind of basically being the reason why the Justice League gets together. Either
Yeah.
they stumble upon the big bad and say, "Oh shit, this is more than we can handle. We need friends. We need super friends." We're not calling it the super friends.
Aw.
Yeah.
No,
So
I actually really like that idea with combining that kind of stuff. And what I would do is probably just pick the character to be the lead, but then bring in the other, just in the way that Thor came out,
mhm.
but then Hawkeye showed up in it, and Iron Man 2, and then Black Widow.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would do Green Lantern and then bring in Green Arrow. And then I would do Blue Beetle and then bring in Booster Gold or something like that.
Or
Like,
something, yeah.
so that would be a fun way to introduce two characters into one movie, but then you're just expanding the universe. And then, like you said, that buddy cop kind of vibe
Yeah,
would be
it's
so
like
much fun. And it would tie into the history of the DCU. So anybody who's a comic fan would get all excited and jazzed up, say, yeah, this is amazing.
yeah,
I
that's I
like
mean,
that.
because the thing is like the writing for Booster Gold and Blue Beetle was absolutely fucking hilarious. Like it just I mean, Blue Beetle and his big wah ha ha laughter and stuff like that. And I mean, then Booster Gold having like a little bit of the man out of time because he's from the 30th century, and you know some of the things he says don't work because we don't have the backstory to support that dialogue hasn't happened yet. And he's like, "What do you mean you don't know what that means?" Um,
That'd be
so
amazing. Okay, how much better would that be than the Authority?
probably a lot better. Now the I like the idea of the authority, but that sort of
In
shit
phase one? Yeah,
has to happen further down the line.
exactly.
So I would probably almost set it up so that by the time you get to the Justice League movie, we've already set the stage for why they're coming together. Who is it that's basically who is it that they have to face that they feel they have to get together as a team to face it down? And Steppenwolf is not the answer, and it wouldn't be Darkseid either. Darkseid wouldn't be until phase 2 or chapter 2. I would have the big bad setting up at the end of the whole shebang would be the Legion of Doom, led by Lex Luthor. Maybe even you have Ra's al Ghul, Lex Luthor. Oh Christ, what's his name? The guy who's like 10,000 years old. Uh, fuck, I just lost his name. It was around the tip of my mind. Come on, Mike, help me out here.
I don't know. I'll Google
Uh,
it. Keep talking.
yeah. He was the one who ran the Legion of Doom there for a while. It's like the oldest man in the world, the most interesting man in the world. Vandal Savage, that's his name.
Hey, you beat me.
I did. So yeah, have Vandal Savage as him and Ra's al Ghul have basically been behind the scenes in a couple of the films pulling the strings. So
I like that.
by the time you get to the Superman film, you know, he beats Lex because Lex has a real hard on for aliens. And when he sends Lex off to prison, it's the clone that goes off to prison because between Savage and Ra's al Ghul, they kind of divert that and like, you know, Luthor, we need your mind, your scientific genius, your hell bent on killing Superman sort of drive. Here's the Legion of Doom. Make us better. Make us so that when we take down the various people that we're facing, we also get to take down Superman. So you by building this, and then you have the Booster Gold and Blue Beetle kind of stumbling upon their plot indirect way, like not really directly, but kind of like getting clues. So by the time you reach the third film, they realize this is bigger than we thought it was. You know, Cord Industries is like, you know, they're being taken hostile takeover, and it's not LexCorp like he thought. It's this other group that's actually a front for Ra's al Ghul. And turns out that's actually not even his. That's actually something for Vandal Savage. And then they realize this is a much bigger threat than we thought it was going to be. We need help. And that's when they reach out to their super friends. And that's how you start the Justice League.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Because the thing is,
But
you don't even need to call it Justice League until the very end of the film when the Legion of Doom has started to move forward and is like picking off the heroes. And that's when the survivors are realizing they have to band together. And when they finally band together and, you know, come together and defeat the Legion of Doom, that's when they can brand themselves, we are the Justice League. End of chapter 1, move into chapter 2, where Darkseid becomes the big bad.
Yeah, I like that. My third movie would be Wonder Woman. Start with the Trinity. So Batman would get his TV series, end with a movie, bring in Robin, Dick Grayson, not this modern crap. I like the idea of the buddy cop team ups, so keep that, and yeah, then end with something. Legion of Doom sounds great. Something that kind of brings villains from the different ones coming together, so that the heroes also have to come together.
Hmm.
And that's how you get your DCU Avengers, something that brings everyone from all those different movies, all the different villains, some big thing that will make you billions of dollars, and done.
Exactly.
And then on the side, I would do crazy stuff, like do your Plastic Man, do that kind of stuff, or
Yeah.
like any sort of weird bonkers. Like I'd rather have something like that than Creature Commandos. And I understand why that's in the mix, but
Hmm.
Supergirl, I wouldn't worry about that for now. To make
Yeah.
that phase two, you have your Wonder Woman as your strong female character.
Now
That'll be there.
for Wonder Woman, the first movie they had, what, Ares was her big bad. World War One and Ares. Two, I don't even want to talk about because that was just a terrible movie. Um, I would actually have, if to do a Wonder Woman film, um, yeah, it'd be kind of maybe a little bit of too eco of like, uh someone is poisoning Themyscira, um, to the effect of she, like, Diana has to leave Themyscira to figure out where this is going, where this is coming from, trail it all the way to Florida, and in Florida she runs up against Poison Ivy. This helps you link you to Batman. um I would, what's his name, Maxwell Lord, who eventually she shot and killed, or no, he killed Blue Beetle, but eventually she killed him, and also brings her into conflict with Swamp Thing, who she doesn't realize isn't a villain, who basically he's an eco warrior, but she doesn't realize this because it's really hard to make him talk. Um, and that kind of helps set up, then you can do a Swamp Thing side project, something nice and quirky, like a little 6 episode HBO series. That's fine, but it helps set him up so we have some of these other things. Also, by doing stuff like that, it's not really a red herring in as much as, oh, it's a character we're never using again, but it's a character we're using briefly, but we can bring back now that we've established them. But also by mixing some of the villains that they're going to encounter, it's not like, hey, it's Wonder Woman, she has to encounter Cheetah, and she has to encounter this person. We can, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of these characters, we can mix some of the villains, so she can end up facing Poison Ivy.
Yeah, and Wonder Woman doesn't really have a lot of great villains
No, she
except
doesn't.
Cheetah.
Yeah, so you save Cheetah for later when she's part of the Legion of Doom. And you can even actually start off the Wonder Woman after she gets to mainland. She faces down Cheetah and defeats her, and thinks of nothing else. It's out of her, like, beat her, whatever. She's out of the way. This is something Cheetah's like, well, I don't. That's not out of my mind. The bitch beat me. I need to get revenge. That helps, gets her the impetuous she needs to get into the Legion of Doom, because she's going to take down Wonder Woman. That's her goal. But by having Poison Ivy, by using the Batman villain, this helps now establish that Batman's part of this same world, and that their paths are going to cross in some way. Because, when she's looking up, when we're finding out about Poison Ivy, oh, it's Pamela Isley of Gotham. Well, at some point she could even say, well, it looks like I'm going to have to go to Gotham and track her down. Well, you go to Gotham, you're going to be stepping all over Batman's backyard. He's going to show up. So this helps kind of set up some of the crossing of the different heroes and stuff like that. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of the way I would deal with her.
Then one weird one I would do would be Checkmate. That would be my Waller of the mix, because I thought that was a fun comic book series, and it would just introduce a weird element. That would be like a TV series rather than a movie.
Oh,
But that would bring in Suicide Squad and Waller and
I would have the
Peacemaker.
Suicide Squad show up in every movie and every series in some form or another.
Everyone.
Every goddamn one.
Why is that? Why would you do that?
Just so that their Waller's hands are prevalent in the DC universe. So in the Batman series, while it's year one, we may see like it's a group of criminals being run by a supervillain, and they're like stopping a ship from coming in from Gotham Harbor. That's all they're doing, and it's not a major integral part of the story. Maybe only you see them in like half of one episode, and you never see them again. But that was the Suicide Squad. In every film, Booster Gold, they run at some point they run across members of a Suicide Squad team doing an action or doing a mission, and either they thwart it or they just stand there, like stand back and go like, holy shit, look at that, that looked dangerous, and then most of them have died off or whatever, and then black vans pull up and dragging bodies into the vans, and they pull away, and they're like, huh, okay. And then they carry on with whatever they were doing. So the Suicide Squad is, in a way, the glue that is connecting everything together. So when you do something like a Checkmate, that's nothing but the Suicide Squads, plural, and Waller at basically the head of that, sending them out, they can reference past missions that are referencing series and movies that are already done. And they could be talking about upcoming missions, which are talking about upcoming movies and series that are coming out soon. That's the glue that's kind of binding everything together.
That'd be fun.
Because she's, there's in the comics and whatnot, she's not just always, it's not just one crew that she's sending out the whole time. There are multiple crews that she is sending out for various things that she's getting done. So that would be, if you reach if movie 5 is like a checkpoint, or sorry, Checkmate, that's like your middle point where you see just how deeply seated the Suicide Squads and Waller are in the DC universe. And it also, and if it's done with the same flair of Peacemaker, it'd be great. And you could even do it instead of as a movie, you do it as a series, and like episode 1 is the mission in Gotham, and episode 2 was the mission in Metropolis, and episode 3 was this, and episode 4 was that. And then when you get to like 6, 7, 8, 9, you're like, wait a second, what are they talking about dealing with why are they talking about Green Arrow, or why are they talking about Mockingbird? What's going on? We haven't seen these characters yet. Well, they've already met them. So also it makes fun to then, after watching the series and then you watch the later stuff, you go back and watch the series again, you're like, oh, it's son of a bitch, they set it up right there.
Yeah, and that's actually what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. should have been.
Yes.
It's what it tried to be at the beginning
and failed,
but didn't quite land it.
Yeah. So that's how I would handle Checkmate and Waller and the Suicide Squads. I wouldn't do a Suicide Squad movie. I would just do it as a 10-episode series dealing with different members of different squads with different members in each. So every episode is a completely different episode. Excuse me, completely different cast except for Waller. Like every episode, it's a whole new Suicide Squad doing their mission. And and because you have this 10-year plan, you can write it in that way. Each 10 episodes is a different,
even if you don't know what you're doing, you just leave a whole bunch of crumbs in there. It's like, we might be able to build off this later.
Exactly. And it gives you a jumping off point for projects. Like, oh, well, at what point in this project is the Suicide Squad going to be seen doing whatever it is they're doing? And do the main characters interact? Do they watch? Do they just you could even have it as much as it's a television in a restaurant showing like the aftermath of something that happened. And they're like, unidentified, superheroes, perhaps even villains, were found dead at the scene of such and such. And that's it. That's the only crumb in that film, but it's enough to link it.
Yeah. And then if I was doing my run, my whole phase 1 of this, so you start with a Henry Cavill Superman, but then you bring in the new Superman, closer towards the end. In the same way you say you kind of have to build to it. So start off strong and say, hey, we can make a movie, do all the other stuff. And then, towards the end of the phase, you do the soft reboot or whatever you're doing. Like, this is the new Superman. This is the one that's going to get us the next 10 years. And tell a story for that. And then that would lead into eventually Justice League.
At some point, I would probably do a Cyborg Flash, not really a buddy film, but it's two films happening at the same time, or a series that's happening at the same time.
Cyborg and Flash.
Cyborg and Flash. Just because they're coming from two different angles, but reaching the same goal. So that if you did it as a 10-episode series, every odd episode deals with a Flash, every even episode deals with Cyborg, until episode 10, where it deals with them coming together.
And what would be the end point of that? Like, what would be the story for him?
Well, the big bad would be on the Flash side. It's Gorilla Grodd. And he is basically using technology to define and control the Speed Force. So he's using the equipment that he has stolen from Star Labs, where Cyborg was eventually created, and in essence using the technology of Cyborg to create this machine to control the Speed Force. That brings the two of them together. And also gives you yet another villain to throw into the Legion of Doom.
Nice. Then one thing I'd be looking at, okay, so phase 1, aiming towards Justice League. Phase 2, Teen Titans. So start laying the characters in for phase 1. Teen Titans would be the phase 2 team that would have its own movie, like bring in secondary characters, let them come together, because Teen Titans is such a great team.
Yeah. Well,
I think that could land.
The way I would do that would be if phase 1 is the Legion of Doom is your big bad. Phase 2 is Darkseid and the War Worlds. So when the Justice League gets ripped off Earth into, through a boom tube to one of the War Worlds, that's when the Teen Titans need to form to kind of cover the gap. So that could be a good way of. Meanwhile, back at the ranch on Earth, things are going to shit because all the main heroes are missing. Here come the Teen Titans, like some of the sidekicks and whatnot, to kind of cover it until they get back home. And then
I like it.
Jump back to War World and see what's happening there with like Granny Goodness and Mr. Miracle and Big Barda and all those. So yeah, that's kind of how I would phase it out. And in that case, then I would be not writing for a 10-year plan. I'd be looking more at like a 15 to 20-year plan. Say like, all right, we're looking at a good end, $60 billion worth of profits over the next 20 years. Let's get it done. Let's get us into 2040. By then, everything will be holograms and Google glasses, and people won't be going to the theaters anymore anyway.
I like it.
So, yeah.
I like our slate. Better than this one.
Well, I think it's better than Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Justice League 1 and 2. Or 0.75 and 9. God, 4 hours long. That was just ridiculous. Anyways, let's change some gears here. Oh my God, that was long. So as I said, I have not caught up on the Bad Batch. I've not caught up on Last of Us. I did catch up on Black Panther 2. I still agree that they shouldn't have killed off Black Panther. They tried to. I'm now watching this whole movie from end to end. This movie is basically grief counseling 101. Like, let's deal with our grief. And that's what the whole movie felt like. Namor was just a waste, both in name and power. And I mean, the only good thing he's in that whole thing is when he says, "I'm a mutant." Hey, we officially have mutants in the MCU. That's it. Like, other than that, the character had zero bearing. Yeah. I mean, they could have started off with T'Challa, the vibranium in Wakanda is reacting weird because the vibranium from, that they have in their mountain is now reacting to the vibranium that's down in Atlantis. Like maybe the two have somehow touched and now they're reacting to each other. And this is where T'Challa realizes he has to go find the source of vibranium, where it all came from to begin with. That leads him with to the Guardians of the Galaxies, who blast him off into space. He hands over the reins of power for Wakanda to his mom. Shit happens because the Atlanteans show up and say, "Stop fucking with our vibranium because you're killing us." And she's like, "Well, I'm not doing anything." And, "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not. I'm going to drown you." She gets drowned, and then the daughter takes over as the temporary Black Panther until she hopes her brother comes back. He can come back. You can use a different actor because being out in space has changed him. And that would have been a much better film. Much, much better. And yeah, by the way, it was Iron Man 2 where he's underwater doing shit. Totally could have had Namor attack him, and we could have had that moment. But yeah.
But we didn't.
We didn't. Missed opportunities. So I'm gonna quickly sidetrack here. So people listening, this past week I've been in London, England. If you haven't been, go. It's great. Have a fun time. So they have this tiny little shop called Forbidden Planet.
Tiny?
Yeah, it's tiny. It's this little comic book store that people in London go to when they're looking for comics or graphic novels or, paraphernalia like lightsabers or stuff like that. Actually, when I say tiny, I mean fucking huge. The place is enormous. The upper level is all merchandise, and I mean, so much merchandise. Like, so by the way, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to see this right away. If you're not, I'll describe it to you. So this is McFarlane Series 1 Warhammer 40K. And this one is actually a Dark Angels Intercessor artist proof. So this is an unpainted Space Marine. I
Is that Henry Cavill?
No, I picked him up for £20. And then when I got home, I checked on Amazon, and the cheapest I found him on Amazon was $80 US. And they had like, I don't know, 8 or 9 of these guys, as well as a bunch of other ones. So it's a good investment. And yes, I will be painting him at some point. I'm not the sort to leave shit in boxes. And my friend Derek is like that. He likes to leave stuff in boxes. That's not me.
Derek.
If I can't take it out and play with it, then what's the sense of me buying it? I'm not. Yeah, it's not who I am. I'm surprised it's not out of the box yet. Only reason why it's not is because I want to wait till I get the paints together first, and I'm going to paint this fucker up like you wouldn't believe. Anyways, so this place is huge. You go in, and as I said, there's a giant like glass wall. Pretty much you name the figure or maquette or statue, it's there for sale. Like everything is for sale. There's a price tag on everything. There are lightsabers galore, weapons galore. And then as you come around the corner, you realize it's just shelf upon shelf upon shelf of different merchandise. You name the property, be it Doctor Who, Dungeons and Dragons, whatever, it's there. There's merchandise there. And so, you stroll around there for a good 20 minutes looking at everything, and you realize, oh, look, there's signs for stairs to go down. And you go down and you're in a space that's twice the size of the place you were just in. And it's comic books, graphic novels, comic books, some role-playing stuff. But everything's there. Everything. I mean, manga, you come up with like, oh, I want to see. It's probably there. You search hard enough, you're going to find it. And then they have boxes and boxes of bagged comics for you to like back issues. You like magic fingers your way through and find the issues you're missing, sort of thing. And it was shocking how big the store was, how much merchandise they had packed in there. But I think the most shocking was the clientele. People of all stripes were there. I saw like grandmas with with their grandchildren in there. I saw a gentleman in probably a several £1,000 wool suit from like one of the like Savile Row, picking up his weekly allotment of comic books. I saw the classic stereotypical like college age geek picking up his stuff with his equally geeky girlfriend. I saw people that looked like they were like just stepped off like the runway at like a London fashion show, and like armful of merchandise and comics. So it was like people of it was wonderful to see that there was no age barrier, no economic barrier, no race barrier, no gender barrier. Everyone was there to pick up the stuff they loved, and it was such a wholesome sight to me. There was no animosity between people. It was more like, oh, you're picking up that? That's cool. That looks really awesome. Where'd you get that? I want to get a copy of that too. That was the kind of vibe this place gave off. And it was just, yeah, it was almost magical. It was just like, this is the kind of comic book shop that I'd want to take my kids to. I'd want to go as a regular patron. I'd want to take my kids to and say, see, this is the type of wholesome environment that being a nerd or a geek or any sort of a fan of any sort of fandom, this is the place you want to go. This is the place that's going to celebrate what you love. And yeah, it was great.
Are they a sponsor?
No, I wish they were. I would sponsor them. But yeah, that's the kind of vibe they give. And it's something that I haven't really found in most comic book stores. Like there's one here in Albany, it's just terrible. Like you're made to feel like an interloper when you go in. And they have nothing in stock. They always, well, like we can order that, but there's a 10% markup off the MSRP, and it's just like, fuck it, I'll go to Amazon and order it straight from them, not deal with the MSRP, I guess. So yeah. So
did you buy any comic books when you were there?
We bought my daughter a couple of manga books. They had like this 3 for 2 sale. We bought, oh god, it was a lot of merchandise that we ended up purchasing as like my Warhammer and stuff like that. But yeah, and there was so much more that we were like, ooh, what about, no, we have to be able to fly this back. So we had to consider like how much space we had in the suitcases without having to purchase another suitcase just for souvenirs to come home with. So
because that's one thing I'm curious about, because I know a lot of local comic book shops around here, they're having a tough time because people aren't buying comics anymore. Like the mainstream American comic books.
Yeah. Well,
they're
I
just
would
not
say
getting sales. Like the manga's selling, the trading card games are selling,
yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Collectibles, like what are they? Those Funko Pop or whatever they are, those figures, anything like that, that sells. But
I would say
actual comic books,
80 to 90% of their stock, like paper stock, would be manga or graphic novels. There was a huge section of independent artists, which was just glorious to see. Like, and then, I mean, a space bigger than this room of just shelves of local independent, international independent, like not under like the Image banner or DC banner or Marvel banner, just self-published press or small press or stuff. And it was just like, it was amazing to see that the support that they give these, you know, smaller people, smaller groups. And because it's in London, it's positioned perfectly to be the gateway for Europe, for a lot of European artists to be able to get their stuff out to the masses. I think in Canada and North America in general, it's harder for that to happen because comic book stores are less likely to put some, you know, unknown artist's book on their shelves without some sort of return guarantee. Whereas these guys were like, it looked like a lot of it was throw it on the shelf. If it sells, that's great. You know?
yeah, I will say there's a lot of comic book stores around. I mean, not a lot. There are some gems of comic book stores around that will do that kind of thing. And
but
it is nice where they, you know, just give an outlet, opportunity for up and coming people to present the work.
In North America, normally it's, if you're an independent comic book artist or anything, it's the conventions is where you're going to be able to get some of that stuff out there.
And that's good. I mean, from my experience from doing the conventions, that's gone less and less. So
Mhm.
back when I was doing comic book conventions, it started out there would be hype around all the indie tables. And then as time went on, it was more people selling prints and
Mhm.
t-shirts and knockoffs of existing characters.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was less and less for actual independent comics.
yeah. The last big comic book convention I went to was in Philadelphia, and there was two artist rows. There was the artist row of people doing like, drawings of other people's properties, like Batman and Catwoman
Yep.
kissing or shit like that. That was one artist row, and then this much smaller artist row was people making their own writing and drawing and making their own comic books. And I remember, I mean, this was back in 2010, I think. Um, them saying that that was the smallest that group had ever shown up, and it was like 8 tables, and there was like 2 artists per table. And for a city the size of Philadelphia, this should have been much more, but there wasn't.
Yeah.
And friends of mine who were still there said like by 2016 it was like 2 tables.
I believe it. That's what I experienced.
And it was just because, yeah, more and more people like, well, I want like pictures of Pokemon, or I want this, and that's where the money was.
Yeah.
And it was a case of you
And
decided,
photos of celebrities, if you talk about Fan Expo and things like that.
yeah,
Like they're not there for the comics, they're there to cosplay, to buy merchandise like prints and buttons and shirts and
yeah,
get pictures and signatures.
yeah, which is really sad, really, really
Yeah.
sad. So, yeah. So I'm gonna add, unless you got anything more to add, I'm gonna jump into some more London adventures.
Okay, finish London and I will recap what we've watched this week.
All right. As I said, I didn't watch much this week. It's been mostly London. So, my wife and I went to the British Museum. It's fun to see how many artifacts the British people hold that are not British. There's huge Egyptian wings and whatnot. So we went to the British Museum, which, by the way, is a beautiful structure, beautiful building. We also went to the British Museum of Natural History. Um, but I think in terms of monuments to visit, the most telling, Tower of London. Now you have to pay to go in, because for upkeep for the building and stuff like that. They don't get a national endowment. But Tower of London, in my mind, is probably one of the best adventures you're going to have, especially if you wait for the guided tour. Now it's a free guided tour. Once you have paid your admission, you can go on the guided tour, or you can just wander on your own. My wife and I, we happened to get there just the right time for the guided tour, and oh my god, it was amazing. So the yeomans who give the tour are like basically they're beef eaters. Is like, but their job is to as tour guide of the Tower of London. And then we were told like the minimum requirements to apply to become one of the yeomans is you have to have reached the highest non-commissioned officer rankings. You have to have a minimum of 20 years experience in their armed forces, be it the gentleman we had, he was 22 years experience in the Air Force, and the reaction was great when he said you could be in the Navy, you could be in the Army, you could be in the Air Force. Then he kind of shook his head, and they even take Marines. Um, you get a nice little dig there at the Marines, but yeah, that's just to apply, and then they have a specific uniform they have to wear. They don't wear the red Beefeater uniform that you see in like on the gin bottle and whatnot, just because pollution plays havoc on that uniform. So he was in the blue and red uniform. Anyway, um, hilarious. Tells the history of the tower, when it was built, why it was built, who's lived in there. He talked about the bloodiest execution of, oh god, I just forgot the name. Um, bloodiest. How do you spell bloody? P-L-O-O-D-Y. Bloodiest E-X-E-C execution in London history. Thomas Cromwell. So Thomas Cromwell was held at the Tower of London. He was mentioned as a traitor. It was so. What you have to remember is the yeomans have been around for a long, long time, and they have a book that is updated every year of every event that's happened in the Tower of London. And this book goes way, way back, like ridiculously back. And so Thomas Cromwell was executed July 28th, 1540. Now, normally what they do is when someone is killed, their head after their head is severed from their body by the headsman's axe, they lift the head up and said, England does not suffer traitors. And then the head is put on a spike on the Tower of London so that people coming into London realize that they don't suffer traitors, and then the body is kind of, disposed of. Well, in the case of Thomas Cromwell, he was a royal, which we'll get to later. So it was determined that he needed to be executed, but none of the executioners would do the job because there was a whole stigmatism of killing a royal. So they got this other gentleman. I'm just trying to find his name. Oh God, where is it? Come on, they have to have his name here. They don't have his name. Why not? So anyway, Cromwell defied the king, which was an act of treason. So he was sentenced to death. And they also got to remember this is the time of like Anne Boleyn and others. So Henry VIII had not a whole lot of issue with having people executed. Anyways, by the way, the yeoman's telling us this story, and it is hilarious the way he's telling it, because he's like, "What? You don't understand this? Well, here we go." Anyway, so they had to get someone else to execute Thomas Cromwell, and they got this guy who was good at two things. He was a butcher, and he was a notorious drunk. So he showed up at the execution, not as much as a butcher, but more of a drunk. Does not use a headsman's axe. Now, a headsman's axe, they actually had one on the Tower line, and the blade is a good 12 to 14 inches wide at its cutting point. The idea is it will take off a head with it, and it's heavy enough, it'll take off a head with a single blow, not to prolong the agony sort of thing. Well, this guy shows up with a woodsman's axe, which is a blade about 6 inches wide at its best. This one was probably not that wide. And so the yeoman starts describing the blows. The first blow, because the executioner was a little inebriated, simply scalped Thomas Cromwell. His next blow almost severed the left arm. The third blow, he missed and hit the oak board that he was crouched over. His fourth one lodged into the side of the man's face. At that point, he couldn't get the axe free no matter how much pulling and tugging he tried. At this point, he asked if he could stop. The person running the execution said no, an execution of a traitor must happen today. Continue. Since he couldn't get the axe out, he decided the next best thing would be to pull out the butcher's knives that he carried at his back, grab the man by what's left of the scalp, lift his head up, and start sawing through his neck to get the head free, which took a while. Eventually, he was able to lift the head above with the axe still kind of hanging from the face, and he's supposed to say, "London does not suffer traitors. God save the king." Said something completely different that most people didn't understand. Proceeded to drop the head, went off stage and vomited. Now, this is when they realized every royal needs a portrait done. This gentleman had never had his portrait taken for the National Gallery, like for the Royal Gallery. So instead of putting his head on a spike and disposing of the body, they had to take the axe out, kind of clean up the body, dress it, and set it up so that the royal portrait artist could paint its portrait. Now, luckily, it was the easiest portrait to do because the person sat, like Cromwell sat perfectly still for this portrait, but he was turned facing the opposite direction because the direction he would have normally sat for the portrait, there was a large axe wound down the side of his face. So they had him facing the other direction, and they kind of faked having his eyes open. So if you see the portrait, it looks creepy, very creepy. And it's the only one facing the wrong way. That's why. So the yeoman's telling us this, and people are trying not to laugh because it's a very squeamish subject. But at the same time, the way he's describing it, you're like, who hires the drunken butcher to be your executioner? Who appointed, like when he scalped him with the first hit, maybe someone was like, I think we should go get the headsman's axe. I think we should get someone else who's not drunk swinging it. Let him go. Round two. Oh, almost took the arm off. It's getting closer to the neck, I guess. Oh, he missed. Oh, got him in the face. Well, maybe that'll end him. So yeah. So these are the sorts of things we found out about the two princes who lived at the top of the White Tower who went missing, and luckily by happenstance, their uncle became king. He was in charge of their welfare, and they just disappeared. Maybe they went to America. No, many years later, a chest was found when they were redoing some stairs, and inside, thinking, "Oh, it's treasure," they popped it open, and there was the skeletons of two boys. So I don't think they made it out of the tower. And by pure happenstance, their uncle became king. How fortunate for him. So when you go to the Tower of London, you get to go around and you get to go into the White Tower, which is filled. It was basically their armory. There are suits of armor. There's horse armor. There's more swords, more guns than you can shake a stick at. There's many armors of Henry VIII. There's two sets of armor called the Dwarf and the Giant. One is for Henry VIII when he was like 5 years old, and there's one for a man whose stature had to be close to 7 foot, like just enormous suit of armor. And there's like the different swords of different kings in there, but also at the Tower of London is the crown jewels. Now, with the exception of Charles' crown, which is currently being cleaned and refurbished and readied for his upcoming coronation, there are the crown jewels, like the Kohinoor, I think that's how you say it, Kohinoor diamond in the scepter, which is like the size of a hen's egg diamond. And then there's the slightly smaller sister jewel in the crown. And it's like, I didn't realize diamonds could be so big, because normally you're used to like little diamond, like 1 carat, 2 carat on a ring. This thing is like enormous, and they were so close you could almost touch, but obviously you can't touch. There's a thick piece of glass between you and it, and there's no photography allowed, so I wasn't allowed to get any pictures. But seeing those gems, those jewels that close was amazing. And then later when we went to the Natural History Museum, they had glass replicas of these jewels. And I'm thinking, I just saw the real ones, the ones that are worth like hundreds of millions of dollars, not these glass replicas. So yeah, if you ever go to London and you want a little bit of history, go see the Tower of London. It is incredible. It is an experience you'll never forget. They have there's this whole thing of so there's ravens they keep at the Tower of London, because the whole thing is if the ravens ever leave the Tower of London, the tower will crumble and the monarchy will be dissolved. So they have a yeoman there who is officially known as the Raven Master. And so there's supposed to be 6 ravens at the Tower of London. So he looks after the 9 ravens that are there, because they double up on their bets. Because he's like, three can leave, we still have all six. So it was a nice thing of Matt there. He's like the Raven Master who's here to look after the six ravens, takes very good care of the nine ravens here. You're like, wait, you said six, but now nine. He's like, we just make sure we have spares. You find out that there used to be like zoo animals kept at the Tower of London until they eventually moved them over to what's now the London Zoo, not kept in great conditions. There was baboons that got free and attacked people. Yeah, this place is full of crazy history. Highly recommend going. So that was one of the things we did in London. Now, two more things, then I'm going to hand it over to you, Mike. First one was at the Adelphi Theater. So my wife and I went to see Back to the Future, the musical. I'm currently holding up the program for it. I wasn't 100% sure how a musical based off this movie would work. And I'm here to say, with a couple of story changes they did so that it's no longer the Libyans who supply the plutonium and shoot Doc. And they can't do the chase around town where Marty comes up with the idea of a skateboard. They instead do the chase inside the school. With those two changes made, this works 100% perfectly as a musical. It was so much fun. They have a DeLorean on stage, and they have it on like this turntable so they can make it look like it's driving around 360 degrees. And I'm going to spoil it because at the end, the DeLorean flies. It raises up off the ground, the tires come down, and not only does it fly, it comes right over top of the audience. I know because I was in the fourth row and it came right over top my head. And they even turn it so you can see the people inside the car. So it's not just some cheap, cardboard construct. This thing actually is the damn car. It's unbelievable. Great songs. The guy who plays Doc is hilarious. And the best part is they're coming to New York on Broadway next month. So if you can't get all the way to London to see the show, see if you can get down to London and catch it on Broadway. Highly recommend it. It was amazing. So that was my Wednesday night, and it was great. So Thursday night, the last night, full night we were there, we decided, well, let's go see another show. And we saw The Play That Goes Wrong at the Duchess Theater. I didn't know what to expect. Everyone said it was hilarious. And the fact that when you go to the theater, some of the signage is backwards and hanging upside down. And they show like photos of all the people who were in the cast, including the third from the end was Tom Cruise. But there's a placard towards the front that's saying, unfortunately, Tom Cruise will not be in tonight's performance. Which was kind of like, okay, sure. I don't think he's ever in any of their performances, but you never know. It could happen. And the whole idea is it's a play within a play. So even the book that you can get starts with telling you that you're watching The Murder at Haversham Manor. You're watching, that's the play you're there for. And the play kind of like on the outside running that play it's a troupe of college level actors who are not that good or putting on this play, the Murder at Haversham Manor, and all sorts of things that go wrong. The set is falling apart. Actors keep standing at the wrong mark and get knocked out when a door swings open. So someone else has to take the role so they can finish it off. At some point, it looks like they're asking for audience interaction. Like the guy's like, he sits in this chair and like there's supposed to be a ledger behind the pillow. He's like, a ledger. No ledger. Lifts up the next pillow. A ledger. The next pillow. A ledger. Looks behind the cushion. A ledger. Each time he's saying a ledger the exact same way. And the ledger is currently tucked under the sofa over by the one. And invariably someone in the audience is going to yell out, it's under the sofa. And he stops. And he turns and he sits down on the sofa and he stares right at the audience and he's like, I'm just trying to put on a play. I'm just trying to get through this sequence of lines so that we can carry on to the next act. I would expect the audience to enjoy my performance and enjoy the story we're telling. I would expect this sort of response from the people over at Frozen or Mamma Mia, but not at the murder of, the Murder at Havisham Manor. And he pulls out the ledger and he throws it down on the couch. He puts a pillow on it and he goes, Ledger. And there's a second point. There's like this little second story where they have a little balcony held up by a beam that's supporting it. At one point, the beam gets knocked and the whole thing kind of tilts at a 45-degree. And the guy's kind of like sprawled on there. All like the desk is kind of rolling down at him. And he's like, why is everything up here on wheels? Is he's trying to keep it away from knocking into him and falling off. And the whole play culminates with the entire set collapsing around them. Stuff falling off walls falling down like dominoes around them. And then they just kind of like give a bow. It was without a doubt one of the funniest plays I've ever seen in my life. I would absolutely go see it again. Even knowing what's happening, I would just go. Like the whole play started with, as we were getting in, over the PA comes, so we're missing our English bulldog, Winston. If you see him, could you please detain him and contact a member of the theater? And then this woman comes up behind me and starts talking to these two gentlemen behind me and saying, we can't find Winston. If we paid you, could you be the dog? Like, how good can you bark? And the guy's like, well, how much does it? She's like, I've got a tenner I can give you. And he's like, I don't think I'd want to leave my seat to go play a dog on this. She's like, you'll have great seats. You'll be right there on the stage with it. She's like, I can make it 13 pounds. That's all I have on me. If you'll come be the dog. And he's like, she's like, well, can I hear you bark? And so he gave a couple barks. She's like, I don't think that's going to work. Thanks anyway, though. And she wanders away. And you're like, did he just get proposition? And then the guy who's in charge of like lights and whatnot, he's like, if anyone finds a box set of Duran Duran, that's mine and I would like it back. So if you find it, could you please bring it to me? And you're just like, is this part of the play? Is this like before the play or what's going on? And they're working on the set when you get there. They're like setting boards and trying to they bring a guy in from the audience to help like hold a mantelpiece as they try to duct tape it in place. And then when it falls, they turn to him and they're like, that's kind of like shoddy carpentry on your part. And there's a door that keeps opening and they keep slamming it shut and slamming it shut. And sure enough, in the very first act, the door won't open. So you see the handle, they're jiggling the handle, and people are banging against it, and you see the whole set kind of rocking, and the door won't open. So yeah, it was a great, great play to see. If you ever get a chance to see The Play That Goes Wrong, see it. I mean, the physicality these people had to have. At one point, they had to, when they knocked out one of the girls, they had to kind of pick her up and carry her through the window. And it was not the best way to pick up a person, like one arm, one leg. They managed to do it. And like, of course, stuff's falling. Like the guy who's supposed to be dead starts out laying on the couch with his arm down on the floor, and they keep stepping on his hand, and he keeps going. And eventually at one point you see his hand slowly make its way so it's hidden under the couch so they can stop stepping on it. And they go to take him out on a stretcher, and the stretcher rips. The two guys carrying the stretcher poles leave, so he just kind of planks, and Army crawls his way slowly to the door. And when he stands up and turns his face to the audience, he just crosses his arms over his chest like a dead person, steps to the door, and then pulls it closed behind him. It just keeps going like that. And it's just like, it's hilarious. I can't give it enough props other than if you get a chance to see it, take that chance, go see it.
So which of the two was better?
Well, one was a musical, one wasn't. I would go see Back to the Future in a heartbeat just because it was so great. But if I get a chance to see The Play That Goes Wrong again, I'll take my kids to it because I think Josie will cackle her way through it. You honestly have difficulty breathing because you're laughing so hard so much.
So that's the better one.
I would say it's the funnier of the two. It's been in London playing the longest. I think it's been going since 2014. I think when it was first launched. 2012 is when it first launched. At the Duchess Theater in 2014 we saw it at the Duchess. So it's been going now almost 10 years. Whereas Back to the Future, I think started 2020 in Manchester was the first performance. So The Play That Goes Wrong has been running longer, and it is so well polished. it's you got to see it. You really do. But yeah, Back to the Future. I'd say grab the wife and take a day trip to Toronto or to Montreal to New York and go see it. It's worth it. It really is. So yeah. And I know when Troy listens to this, he's going to be a little jealous because it's Back to the Future. But hey, it was there. I had the opportunity. I wasn't going to waste it. So yeah. All right. So what you've been watching this week?
Yeah,
Hit it,
no
Mike.
live performances. Some of us, have to stay at home with our nose to the grindstone and keep things running. We don't get to see these live performances in London.
Hmm.
I've just been watching anime. So
Mhm.
Demon Slayer, that's the thing we've been watching. And I mentioned it last week. We've been going strong all week. We're almost done with the anime at this point for
Okay.
where it's at. So season 2, it's called the Musen arc.
Okay.
And that's the one that was the actual movie that got broken up into the first part of season 2. And essentially it's this train. So at the end of season 1, Mugen arc, the characters hop on this train, and the guy with the boar head thinks it's a big demon, so he's slamming his head against it. Like, no, it's just a train, but we have to go and investigate what's going on. Turns out it is a demon. There's a demon on the train who's combined with it, and he's eating all the passengers.
Oh.
And so it's a 7-episode arc in the series, and there's this new character that's introduced. I don't know how you say his name properly. I'm gonna mess up all these names.
All right.
Karajuro. Anyways, he's this like flame demon hunter. So his sword makes flames, and it's an obnoxious character in the first season. And that's one thing with the whole Demon Slayer story, is that they introduce these characters that are so obnoxious that the first time they're introduced, you absolutely hate them. But then as it goes on, they start to show their humanity,
Mm-hmm.
kind of warm up to them. And by the end of it, they're some of the favorite characters of the whole series. So yeah, Karojuro Rengoku, he's walking into this town and he's buying all these like box lunches, and every time he eats them, he goes, tasty, tasty. And he likes them so much, he buys all the boxes. He hops on the train. He's just eating the whole time. Meets up with the other demon hunters. But then when it gets to the fight sequence, it's crazy. So the whole train is mutating to this demon. So it's like all the passengers are inside the intestines of this demon, constantly getting eaten. And so all the characters are just trying to survive in the whole thing. Zenitsu, the kid who is obnoxious, but when he falls asleep, he's a savage.
Mm-hmm.
The demon ends up putting everybody to sleep. Bad idea with this character. As soon as he's put to sleep, he just goes into beast mode, starts going down the train with his electric powers, just like cutting up all the demon things, trying to eat everybody. And basically the whole thing goes completely bonkers. And the one guy, the flame dude, Rengoku, he ends up getting killed in the end. Spoilers. So all the characters actually have this like huge dramatic moment. They're all bawling their eyes out. They realize how hard it is to defeat these upper level demons. And then it goes from there. And now we're in the entertainment district arc. So they have a new, geez, I keep Hashirama, oh, whatever the name is. So Hashira, they're a high level demon hunter. So the lower level guys team up with these ones. There's the entertainment district is basically like a Las Vegas, so it's all the nightlife, perfect spot for a demon to hang out because everything happens at night, and then they sleep in the day. People go missing. It's like, oh, we don't know what happened to them. And this storyline is going completely bonkers as well. So what's his name?
Come on.
I forget his name. Whatever the new top guy is, he's got the 3 wives who he sent in to infiltrate. They all went missing. So he brings all the characters in to go find his wives and track down the demon. And the fight scenes that's happened over the last 3 episodes have been completely bonkers. The sister who's being carried around in the box, so Nezuko, she ends up coming to her brother's rescue and gets into a battle with the other demon and goes full on beast mode. So she has that bamboo thing in her mouth. She mutates into this like giant She-Hulk type mode, breaks through the bamboo, starts hacking up this demon who's an upper level. And the demon's sending these ribbons, cutting off all her limbs and stabbing her. She keeps regrowing them. Wow. And the whole neighborhood gets decimated. All these people are cut up and hacked up. She starts seeing the blood on everybody. And then the demon instinct starts coming out. So that bloodlust, and it's like she can't take it anymore. So up until now, she's never attacked a human. She's never had a bloodlust. But in this moment, she goes completely psychotic. So her brother has to go in, get the sword, sheath in her mouth, and just hold her back. And then the demon they're fighting, her brother comes out of her back. So there's 2 demons in one. And that's where we've ended off. So I think we have 2 episodes left. But it's completely crazy. And I can see why this is a beloved anime.
Yes. Wow.
So curious to see how this one ends. We'll find out tomorrow.
That's awesome. Wow. All right. So, do we have anything else?
I got nothing else.
I don't think I do either.
Troy, Gavin, do you have anything?
Now would be the time to tell us, boys.
And if not, I think that brings us to the ending of this episode of Geeking Off the Page.
Episode 67 is rolling to a stop. Oh, that's pretty cool. I promised to try to catch up on things. I know Last of Us is tomorrow night, episode 4. So at some point tomorrow, my wife and I have to catch up on episode 3 before we see 4. So yeah, that'll be.
I'm curious to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to stay away
watch it
from what's going on with episode 3 because everyone's trying to talk about it. I'm like, tell me nothing. So yeah, I gotta get caught up. And then I'm enjoying the series itself. Episodes 1 and 2 have been really, really good. Yeah, can't get enough of it. So that's my take on it so far, at least for the first 2 episodes. All right.
One more thing.
Yes.
Apparently tomorrow in Boruto,
It's
the preview for the Code arc. So this one I've been talking about after all these filler episodes. It's starting soon. Yeah, so we're going to start seeing it. So in upcoming episodes of Geeking Off the Page, I might be talking about Boruto.
Oh, well, spoiler alert indeed. All right, so I think we're going to end there. And thanks for listening, everybody. And I think we're going to try to do a collective goodbye. And hopefully when it's all put together, it doesn't suck like the last one. All right, ready? 3, 2.
Collective goodbye.
There we go. Thanks, folks. Thanks for listening.
This has been Geeking Off the Page, a Planet Geek production. Please be sure to subscribe, share, rate, and review. You can find us at our social medias through Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Search for Planet Geek Productions. On Instagram and Twitter, Planet Geek Pod. Or you can send us an email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. So until next bad time, same spider channel, may the force be with you, and thanks for tuning in.